Hello and welcome back to the channel, and that isn't a clickbait title. I think there's a very real chance that electric bikes are going to disappear in this country the way things are going at the moment. You may or may not be aware that it's one of my passions, electric bikes. I've been on the scene for a very long time, for about 25 years. I started off with one of the Sinclair deter kits that used to bolt onto the back of the bike, and sort of a friction kit that rubbed on the tyre. And then in 2003 I moved on to the Curry USPD system, and then I uprated that and had very high powered versions of that, and have been riding them ever since, different variants of hub motorbikes and everything. I was very deeply involved in that community back in the day there, and was even swapping emails with some of the founders of the Tesla Motor Corporation back in the day, like JB Straubel and people like him. So I know a bit about this subject and about the technology and all the things that they've tried with these electric bikes. And of course, you have to be living in the cave to not have noticed the more recent spate of incidents that have been on the news. And I just thought I'd make this quick video. I've been having a chat with Andy Kirby about this as well, as a friend, and Lewis Ringway Manchester. And it's really disappointing the way that the mainstream media and the news outlets, and on this article that we can see here, that they're conflating what are electric motorcycles, the Suron motorcycles, with electric bikes. They're lumping everybody into the same bracket here. The recent spate of deaths on these electric motorcycles, they are not e-bikes, were caused primarily by the people riding the bikes being chased by the police. Now, that's a separate argument, which some people are for and some people are against. But at the end of the day, these guys were riding motorcycles. They are not e-bikes. If they were e-bikes, they would be road legal, and there wouldn't be an issue. If you look at all of the videos and the pictures that surround those incidents, you'll actually see the broken bikes lying on the floor with the foot pegs. There's no pedals on those bikes. To be classified as an e-bike, there's a number of things that the vehicle must adhere to. The top one is the top speed is 15.5 miles an hour, and also that after that the motor must disengage. It must have pedals. There are a number of other things that it must adhere to be considered an electric bicycle. And the conflation between the Suron bikes and bikes that are similar to that and electric bikes is going to kill the electric bike market overnight. Now, in this article here, and I must add that I'm sad that some people have been killed, but that is, you cannot legislate against all dangers in life. People are killed stepping out in front of buses. People are killed stepping out in front of cars. It's just a fact of life. You can't legislate around that. And I would like to see the statistics on people that have been killed by road legal 15.5 mile an hour electric bikes, because most healthy, fit young people can cycle faster than that on a normal bike. Now, in this article, they're calling for e-bikes to be treated much in the same way as all other vehicles on the road, which is absolutely and utterly ridiculous. So you're going to tell me that we need to treat a e-bike that does 15.5 miles an hour in the same category as a Ferrari that does 200 miles an hour and that weighs half a ton. It's ridiculous. The government, are missing the target for clean air and pollution in all these cities. They're absolutely missing their targets on clean zones. They want to be encouraging people to ride electric bikes and not discouraging them, because I tell you what now, if all of these people that have bought electric bikes, legal electric bikes, not Surons, but legal electric bikes, these people, if they're required to get tax and insurance, MOTs, number plates, they're not going to ride them. And an industry, a very burgeoning industry in this country, a very valuable industry, is just going to be destroyed overnight. And, for the sake of what? For kids riding motorbikes. The problem here isn't the sale of legal electric bikes. The problem is the sale of motorcycles to children, essentially, that ride these things. Now, I also have, I've got a bit of a background and history of messing around on motorbikes as a kid, so I can't really say too much about that from a personal point of view. But at the end of the day, the problem isn't 15 mile an hour electric bikes. Now, this article also, there are a number of other articles that also mention, obviously, that the electric bikes can be modified, which we know. And you can modify an electric bike to go much faster than 15 miles an hour. And I don't fully understand how fitting number plates and making sure people with these kits, or whether they're a standard bike, I'm not quite sure how that will stop those people from making them go faster. Do you see what I mean? I don't fully understand how that will stop the boy racers that are insured and taxed and MOT'd, how it will not stop them making them bikes do 30 mile an hour. It won't. They'll still do it. It's an absolutely ridiculous notion to try and, and also the practical issues of trying to find somewhere to fit a number plate on a bike and a number of other things. It's absolutely, utterly ridiculous. And now I know some of you will be watching this and thinking that this is actually a good idea, and that I'm aware of that. I'm aware that this is, fairly divisive with some people. But if you want to, the problem with this incident here where this young lad died on the Sauron being chased, if you want to make more of these incidents happen, the way to do that is to criminalise 15 mile an hour e-bikes and have the police chasing people on 15 mile an hour e-bikes because they're not showing a number plate, because that's what you're going to get. Because a lot of people, there's million plus bikes out there that a lot of people aren't going to go and get in tax insurance and MOT. And so you're going to have actually more police chases on these bikes. It's utterly ridiculous. It's a typical knee-jerk reaction to a situation by politicians in this country that they do all the time, and they apply it to everybody. I mean, I understand it's a tricky problem to solve with these Sauron bikes, but before they were electric, those bikes were pit bikes, weren't they? We had and they still are. We have guys around here that ride motorcycles, that with a noisy exhaust and everything, and tear around on those. Now are we suggesting that we should, ban motorcycles? I mean, it's a crazy thing. You can't ban this. You can't ban this technology, and you certainly can't, accuse people that are riding road legal 15.5 mile an hour e-bikes of killing people. And the people that are being killed are these kids that are riding these high-powered Sauron bikes and similar ones and are falling off them. And they often don't wear helmets, and obviously they're not very skilled riders because they're young riders, and they tend to panic when they're being chased as well by the police and go flat out. And of course, the inevitable is going to happen. And I'm aware that these kids ride these things on the pavement and that they act stupid on them. So I'm not, I fully understand the public's concern on this as well. It's not all just one way, but to actually effectively, with this legislation, if it goes through, to actually effectively criminalise people for riding a 15 mile an hour electric bike is, unless they get number plates and insurance, is absolutely ridiculous. Now, this is being brought through via somebody called Ian Stewart, who's chairman of the Commons Transport Select Committee, and his colleague, I think it was somebody called Greg Smith here. And he says, and I quote, e-bikes and e-scooters can achieve considerable speeds and cause damage to other vehicles and injure people, so should have to carry the same insurance requirements and tax liabilities as users of motor cars. Well, yes, I mean, this is if they go above 15.5 miles an hour, if they're considered a moped, sure. But if your argument is that e-bikes and e-scooters can achieve considerable speeds, well, a fit Lycra dude on a racing cycle can do 30 mile an hour on the flat. So are we saying that these guys also now need insurance and number plates as well, as they've done in Italy? It's ridiculous. They're just trying to placate these sort of pearl clutching conservative voters that they've lost. And this one made me laugh the most. Tony Campbell, the chief executive of the Motorcycle Industry Association, somebody who actively doesn't want people riding e-bikes, they want them riding motorbikes. He says, which represents the sector? Which sector? Doesn't represent the e-bike sector, does he? He represents the motorcycle sector. He represents the Saurons, which you probably should be banning or trying to control the sale of to minors at least, shouldn't you? Called for new laws to include anti-tampering measures to outlaw e-bikes being modified for faster speeds. Well, again, the e-bikes that are being modified for faster speeds are not the ones here that are killing people. Okay, there might be the odd incident here or there, but the problem that we are seeing at the moment in towns and cities is actually children riding electric motorcycles, not e-bikes. And really the industry needs to really hammer this home and get this, and also get this mindset out of the attitude out of the mindset of the public as well, because otherwise, it's going to cause a lot of spit and venom out there for people that are riding bikes. If this does come in and they try and bring this in, it's not going to be nice out there for people that are navigating their way to and from places on electric bikes. You're just going to demonise people on them, like people are demonised for flying drones or for daring to ride an e-scooter round the park with their children or something. They're going to just demonise this, and they're going to absolutely just destroy an industry overnight. And something that a lot of I don't know, you'll have noticed yourselves that I see a lot more elderly people out cycling now on electric bikes and enjoying the sort of freedom that they get from that. And if this stupid legislation that basically is trying to combine basically compare motorcycles with push bikes is brought in, it's just going to kill it completely overnight, absolutely destroy it. So anyway, I just thought I'd bring this up because I know I don't do much e-bike stuff on here, but like I say, in the past I've been very active on this community and was pretty big on the scene back in the day. So I don't do so much e-biking stuff now, but I was chatting with Andy about this, and it was brought up as a concern. There are already laws in place to prosecute people that ride electric bikes that go quicker than 15 miles an hour. There doesn't need to be any more legislation. The legislation is there, and the legislation is also there for these kids that ride these electric motorcycles, because they should be treated exactly as they are, as motor vehicles, and it should be dealt with in exactly the same way as they would deal with somebody back in my day on a scrambler, riding on the road or off-road and injuring somebody. It should be treated exactly that way. The actual method of propulsion in terms of those motorcycles doesn't mean anything. The method of propulsion, in fact, they're quieter, they're not as noisy, but the actual definition of those vehicles that them kids are hurting themselves on is motorcycles. They're not e-bikes. If they were e-bikes, we would all be riding them, wouldn't we? They're not e-bikes, so leave the e-bikes alone. In fact, if anything in this country, the e-bike laws are crippling. I mean, the 250 watt motor limit is ridiculous. That's way too weak to get most substantial people up a hill. They need to look at increasing the power levels. Okay, I'm not saying the top speeds, but increasing the power levels up to at least 1 kilowatt to help people ascend hills and things like that. A power limit on e-bikes has never made any sense. A top speed and acceleration limit, sure, but a power limit, why? Why limit the power? I mean, if you're a heavy guy, you need that power to get up the hill. So they actually need to encourage more people onto cycles to reduce local air pollution. That way everyone can be happy. There's less cars on the road, the air is cleaner, it's a win-win situation. So anyway, I just thought I'd bring this to your attention if you hadn't seen it, and I know it's a bit of a long video, but you're welcome to click off at any point. But I certainly think if you're concerned about this, it'd be worth contacting Ian Stewart and Greg Smith, the two MPs that are involved in perhaps trying to draft this ridiculous legislation. I imagine it will probably receive considerable kickback from the electric or e-bike industry, so there will be a lot of other people flagging up this absolutely ridiculous comparison they're trying to make between motorcycles and push bikes, which is what they're classed as. Electric bikes are classed as in the same class as a push bike. So there you go. To summarise, current road legal electric bikes in the UK with a maximum speed of 15 miles an hour do not pose a significant threat to the public. There is no history of these road legal e-bikes causing excessive harm or being considered more dangerous than any other vehicle on the road. It's important to distinguish between road legal e-bikes and the Sauron, which can reach speeds of up to 50 miles an hour and have a power output far exceeding the UK's legal limit of 250 watts. Such bikes are rightfully classified as motor vehicles and already require tax, insurance and an MOT to be ridden on the UK roads. No changes to the laws regarding these vehicles are necessary. Addressing their use on the roads is a separate issue independent of e-bikes, as they do not fall under the classification of an e-bike. There are already existing laws in place to protect individuals who modify their electric bikes or ride bikes that exceed the 250 power-watt limit. There's no changes needed in this regard. The current e-bike limits in the UK are already quite restrictive compared to other countries, especially the low power limit of 250 watts. This in and of itself acts as a barrier for many individuals due to the high cost of the bikes and the slow performance. Requiring tax, insurance, MOT and licence plates for these electric bikes would have a detrimental effect on their sales. Additionally, some existing users would likely continue to ride their bikes without adhering to these requirements. This would lead to increased police interactions and potentially more accidents. People would still modify their e-bikes to achieve higher speeds even if they have insurance and number plates. It's important to note that the majority of deaths and injuries on the road that are hitting the headlines at the moment are not caused by the use of e-bikes, they're caused by the use of electrically powered motorcycles. Insisting on tax, insurance and MOT for 15 mph e-bikes would not prevent children and young adults from illegally riding motorcycles, which actually do require all of these measures. Instead of creating obstacles to the adoption of clean transportation, the government should be reducing them, especially since air quality targets are not being met in many cities. It is unfair to equate the safe and responsible use of road-legal electric bikes with the illegal and reckless use of motorcycles. Fair governance should not conflate these two issues. Right, I hope you enjoyed that. I am going to leave the comments open on this video, so please leave your comments below. Please be respectful. I understand not everyone has the same view on this, and obviously bear in mind the sensitivities regarding some of the subject matter in the video. So please be polite to each other and we can hopefully have a conversation on this. So if you have been, thank you ever so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.